Hi, everyone, and welcome to our SEAC meeting this evening. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. So it is just after 7 o'clock. I'm going to go ahead and call our meeting to order. So we are going to start our meeting off, as we always do, with our opening prayer and our land acknowledgement. So we'll just give it a second here. Great. So if you will all join me in the sign of our faith, in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. We come together in hope from different community groups, answering the same calls to service, pieces of the same puzzle. We come together in gratitude for the trust placed in us, for the opportunity to serve, pieces of the same puzzle. We come together in respect, aware of our diversity, willing to work for the good, pieces of the same puzzle. We come together in awe of the wonder and beauty of each of God's children, pieces of the same puzzle. We come together in God's name, and as we work together toward the same goal, each piece of the puzzle begins to fit neatly into place, creating a breathtaking picture of love, compassion, courage, and grace. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. And now we will do our land acknowledgement.
Each of us has a relationship to the natural environment, the land, water, earth, the habitat, and ecosystems. Land acknowledgements provide us with an opportunity to offer recognition, respect to the original inhabitants of the regions that we live in and work on. There are many things that we can do to go beyond simply reading a land acknowledgement script. To make it more meaningful, we need to consider that we are, in fact, acknowledging not only the ancestral lands, but also the historical and complex intersections of settler impacts on Indigenous histories, economies, ecologies, livelihood, well-being, and governance structures. A territorial acknowledgement is not an endpoint in the journey of reconciliation. Actions create conditions for true reconciliation and create a foundation for restoring, renewing, or developing a new relationship with Indigenous peoples. For hundreds of years, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Attawaddaron, the Potawatomi, the Wendat, and Lenape nations have sought to walk gently on this land. They assisted the first European travelers to this territory and shared their knowledge for survival in what was, at times, a harsh climate. Under consultations from elders, knowledge holders from the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation and 6 nations of the Grand River Territory, the Indigenous Education Advisory Committee, along with Halton Catholic District School Board, created this land acknowledgement.
Halton, as we know it today,
is rich in the history and modern traditions
of many First Nations and the Métis.
From the lands of the Anishinaabe
to the Attawaddaron,
the Haudenosaunee,
and the Métis.
These lands surrounding the Great Lakes
are steeped in Indigenous history.
As we gather today
on these treaty lands,
our Catholic social teachings
call us in solidarity
with our Indigenous brothers and sisters
to honor and respect
the 4 directions:
lands, waters, plants, animals, and ancestors
that walked before us.
All of these wonderful elements of creation exist,
gifted to us by our Creator God.
We acknowledge and thank
the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation
for being stewards of this traditional territory.
Thanks so much, Andrea. Moving on to item 1.2 is the approval of the agenda. Can I get a mover for the approval of the agenda? Moved by Paul, thank you. Can I get a seconder?
Diane.
Thanks, Diane.
Diane.
Thank you, Diane. Okay, moving on to item number 2, declarations of conflict of interest. Do we have any declarations of conflict of interest this evening? Okay, I'm not hearing any. So that's moving right into item number 3, which is our presentations. We do have 2 presentations this evening. Our first presentation is our budget presentation. So I'd like to introduce Aaron Lofts, and he's no stranger to SEAC, but Aaron is our Superintendent of Business Services and Treasurer of the Board, and also Adam Cross, Senior Manager of Financial Services, who will present on special education budget information. Welcome to you both. I will just ask if we can all hold questions until the end, just so we can get through the presentation, and then we can take questions at the end, if that works okay for you guys. All right, take it away.
Thank you through you, Madam Chair. Thank you for inviting us, and welcome everyone to our presentation on the 2022-2023 budget for SEAC. This year we received the GSNs early. In fact, the earliest I've ever seen. We received them February 17th. However, the information that staff relies on to calculate board-based revenues was released March 25th, which is still earlier than it has been for the past few years. So let's hope this is another sign that we're now on the other side of the pandemic. So just before we move forward with the presentation, I just want to remind everyone the importance of enrollment, and that enrollment has the largest impact on our revenues. So including the amount that we're actually funded for special education. Unfortunately, another impact that COVID-19 has had on boards and school boards in particular is the ability to calculate accurate enrollment forecasts. So HCDSB has not been an exception. We'll discuss this a little further on in the presentation during the enrollment slides. Thus, for tonight's presentation, as introduced through Madam Chair, Adam Cross, who's our Senior Manager of Financial Services, and I'm Aaron Lofts, the Superintendent of Business Services, will discuss the following items. Bear with me, I just want to change the slides here. Sorry. Let's see. There we go. I just want to make this a little easier to read. There we go. So we're going to look at the HCDSB's estimated enrollment, budget consultation survey, the 22-23 SEAC priorities, the 2022-23 budget challenges. We're going to look at last year's, or the revised estimates, revenues for 21-22, as well as the revised estimates expenses for 21-22, as well as, sorry. As well as the 22-23 special education announced funding. So I want to actually hand it over now to Adam, who's going to go through the challenges that relate to enrollment. So Adam.
Thank you, Aaron, and thank you to the SEAC committee for allowing us to speak to you today. As Aaron kind of mentioned in his introduction there, the GSN is one of the primary drivers for special education funding and the GSN funding as a whole for the board. You'll see this chart. It's a chart that should be familiar to you. You've seen it in previous years, but it shows sort of how we were on this continual upward growth trajectory. And then unfortunately, due to the pandemic, we've seen a change and a reduction in enrollment the last 2 years. Even for this current year that we're in, 21-22, we've seen a drop in what we were projecting our enrollment to be at our original estimates to where we are at our revised estimates. So when we reassess after the October 31st count date that is prescribed to report to the ministry, we reassess where our actual kind of enrollment is, and we saw a 2.4% decrease from original estimates on the elementary school panel, and we saw a 1.1% decrease from the secondary panel. So that's just showing you kind of how volatile our enrollment is right now in terms of predicting it, because we've kind of had that consistent, steady growth. Our models, it's challenging to figure out the enrollment kind of during this pandemic. So we're hoping that as we're coming out of the pandemic, we'll kind of get back to business as usual and see that enrollment going up, because obviously when we get more enrollment, it gives us more funding that we're able to invest in important services. So the next thing that we wanted to kind of bring to Ciac's attention is the results of the 2022-2023 budget consultation survey. So we do this survey every year. There are different questions on it most years, trying to get feedback from the constituents and from our school populations as to where they feel we should be spending funds or increasing our focus on in terms of the services that we provide. And the next kind of 3 slides show the 3 survey questions that tie nicely into special education. The first one is directly related to special education. We asked if respondents could rate the importance of providing certain ongoing supports in the areas kind of listed in this chart for special education initiatives. And you can see here that the large portion of the respondents felt very strongly for the items that they ranked high. So the early intervention programs rated extremely high, as well as some of the other topics, which tie nicely actually into the priorities for the 2022-2023 Ciac committee that we'll discuss in short order. So hopefully that's a result of Ciac members contributing to the survey, but nevertheless, it's also nice to get the feedback overall, because we did have over 1,700 respondents to the survey in total. So unless I miscounted, I'm pretty sure there are 1,700 Ciac committee members. So there's a lot of public that feel the same needs match the priorities of this committee. The next kind of survey item that we wanted to bring to your attention that ties to Ciac is tutoring. So the ministry did announce significant tutoring funding for the upcoming 22-23 year, as well as for the remainder of the 21-22 school year. So as part of our survey, we were trying to gauge how or when we would be people would prefer, or students would prefer us to offer tutoring. And you can kind of see that it is a mix over the different sort of time periods and mechanisms, whether it be online, in school, or after school. Primarily, or the slight majority here at 33% preferred the after school day model. But again, this is a good news story for the board that we have additional funds for tutoring, as the pandemic has been challenging, especially in special education, and making sure that all our students are getting the needs that they can or deserve and need. So having this additional funding is very beneficial, and this results of this survey helped us kind of guide future planning on how we're going to provide that tutoring to the students. And then the last one that we wanted to highlight is the question that talked to the importance of mental health and well-being. And we were again looking to get feedback from respondents as to sort of where they would want us to focus our attention. And you can see here that it was all strongly felt that all 3 kind of options were important. So expanding our online virtual support, again, providing additional resources and staffing, and expanding parent and family information, which again tie nicely into the Ciac priorities for 2022-23, which I'll turn it over to Aaron to just highlight now.
Thanks, Adam. Just regarding these priorities, I just want to make sure it's important to note that the special education budget right now is currently higher than special education funding, which it has been for a number of years. We'll get to that a little later in the presentation, but I also want to remind the committee that special education funding must be spent on special education. A term you may have heard of as enveloping. This means that all the funds from the GSN relating to special education must be spent on special education. Any unspent funds would be carried forward into future years. So you might think, well, if we're in a deficit of a certain percentage of the actual funding, how do we have anything to carry forward? Well, certain areas of the funding are, like we said, enveloped. And one example would be the special education equipment funding, where there's a per pupil amount. So if we don't spend it all in the current year, that amount will be carried forward into future years, and it does not count or does not help in lowering any kind of deficit relating to special education. That money is carried forward in deferred revenue. So looking here at the Ciac priorities, we received this from Ciac, which is great. We broke it down to 3 categories. So one being staffing, which I'm sure everyone here is familiar with, and I apologize, my presentation skills with the aren't as good as I would have hoped with respect to using a Acrobat. So there we go. And the second one's our professional development and training and technology. Now these will be discussed, all these items will be discussed at the senior table, and decisions made will be brought forward to the trustees as part of the 22-23 June budget. The next area we kind of want to focus on is some of the challenges that we're going to have with respect to the budget. So we kind of talked a lot today about enrollment, and enrollment is our biggest challenge, given that enrollment has the biggest impact on our revenue. So Adam kind of went over the enrollment graph earlier, which showed that we're currently actually in a declining enrollment stage, and it's primarily due to the pandemic. So it makes it difficult to forecast what exactly our enrollment will be, because things have definitely changed from a typical year. If you would have saw that graph, it was a very steady incline, and in the last couple of years, it's actually gone the opposite direction. So as I mentioned earlier, the majority of GS funding is related directly to enrollment. So for example, the impact was a drop of over $600,000 in special education revenues from what was estimated back in June of 2021, when we thought we were getting a certain level of enrollment, to what we actually ended up estimating in December 2021, which is when we do something called the revised estimate. So we take a look at where we are at the start of the school year. As of October 31st is our enrollment count, and then we revise what we think our revenue will be as well as our expenses. So when we did that revision based on enrollment, we had a drop of over $600,000 in special education revenue from what we discussed last June, or I guess it would have been last April, the last time we met. And this may also even grow larger depending on what the final enrollment is for this year. We had another count date, everyone, March 31st. What happens is for enrollment, you take the average of our enrollment as of October 31st and the average of our enrollment as of March 31st to get our year-end enrollment. So depending on what our numbers not finally, but what our numbers are as of March 31st, which we're still collecting from the schools, this may also have a negative impact on our overall revenue, not just to special education, but to the board. Another big area of concern is the expense uncertainties. So this is a concern given that the inflation rate surpassed 5% on a year-over-year basis for the first time since 1991. So this will definitely have an impact on the cost of the items we're purchasing, not just in special education, but in the entire budget of the board. There's also additional costs related to employee absenteeism and technology related to operating remote learning. So remote learning has been the ministry has indicated will be extended into 22-23. So this does differ from e-learning or e-credits. This is remote learning, similar to St. Clair right now is our remote learning school, for example. And then we just fast forward, but move to the next slide. And then, so for last year, our overall deficit was expected to be, in last year, I should probably preference this by saying I'm now in budget mode, so I'm now in the next school year. So last year is actually our current school year, 21-22, and it's expected to be about 7.1 million. And like I mentioned before, a large part of that is based on another decrease in enrollment from where we thought we'd be last June to where we think we're going to be as of December. Now I'm going to hand it back over to Adam, and he's going to look at our revised estimates, revenue and expenditures for the current year 21-22, and I'll kind of get into that deficit calculation as well. So Adam.
Thanks, Aaron. Yeah, so the next couple of slides, we just wanted to give Ciac an update as to what our revised revenue and expenses were for our budget submission to the ministry, our revised estimate submission to the ministry in December. And then also After that, we'll highlight kind of where we are today for the 21-22 school year. And then we'll talk about future funding in the 2022-2023 school year after that. So this slide is just a summary of the different elements that are in the special education funding. So some of these you'll see in the revenue slides are attached to enrollment, as we've kind of talked about earlier. And then there are other variables or components that make up special education funding that don't deal with our enrollment, but deal with more demographic, census data, and other things of that nature. So this slide shows the majority of the special education revenue. So you'll see the special education per pupil. So this is where enrollment does play a factor in the funding for special education. And for our 21-22 revised estimates, it was almost $27.8 million. The C, so the special education equipment, this is claims based. So you submit a claim to the ministry to receive funding. There is a component of this that the board has to pay for first before the ministry reimburses the amount spent above the $800 threshold. And then there's a small component for per pupil amount where, again, enrollment plays a factor. The next large area is the projected measures of variability. So this is where it kind of diverts from enrollment-related funding and moves more into the other variables that they use to calculate kind of more specific for our school board versus other school boards, what our needs would be or are projected to be based on census information and other information that the ministry gathers. And then if we look to the next couple of slides, show some of the smaller components, but no less important components. So our behavioral expertise, so having our behavioral analysts, as well as training, our after schools development program, we have funding there. And that one's actually new for 21-22 compared to previous years. So small amount, but a new amount, which is always positive to see. And then self-contained classrooms was $2.1 million. And then some of the other components. So we do receive some other funding. So within the GSN, there's specific special education funding. There also is a small component of funding that comes from the Pupil Foundation grant. Again, it's driven by enrollment, and this is for EAs, so that's at $275,000. And then we also receive some priorities and partnership funds. So those are specialized grants for specific purposes that we were able to get for spec ed needs this year, where again, we have to spend it for what that specific grant entails. And then if we don't spend it, we have to return it. But usually spec ed does a good job of making sure that we're utilizing all the funding that's available to them. And then again, the way that the C equipment balance works, as Aaron kind of alluded to before, if we didn't spend it, it would stay in deferred revenue. So last year we had $712,000 unspent. So that carried over into the 21-22 school year. We were going to receive, or we were going to claim an additional $1.3 million. So we were still projecting to carry forward that same $712,000 going into 22-23. So our total revenue at revised estimates in December was $53.6 million for special education. Looking at the expense side, so the largest portion for special education expenses is related to salaries and benefits. And the two primary areas are special education teachers at $22.3 million, and then our educational assistants at $25.3 million, and then our professionals and paraprofessionals are $9.3 million. So this is our CYC, so our child and youth counselors, our social workers, our administrative staff, our behavioral analysts, etc. And then our other components to our expenses, again, and more salaries and benefits. So this time related to our educational assistant supervisors, as well as our special education consultants. And then that brings us to a total of $58.4 million for salaries and benefits. And then our other expenditures total $2.2 million for a total expenses of $60.7 million. So at 96.4%, our salaries and benefits are the largest portion. The remaining $2.2 million is related to other items that are spent for spec ed needs. So travel, transportation costs, textbooks, classroom materials, technology and equipment, and workshops. Not included in kind of the travel or transportation in that 2.2 is the actual transportation costs for special education that are grouped in with our normal transportation costs in our budget, and that's another 2.4 million that is reflected there. And the one last thing that we wanted to point out is that the salary and benefits of the superintendent for spec ed and the administrative assistants are covered under the board admin and governance grant, so they're not reflected in those salary and benefit costs above. And then this just shows the shortfall for the 21-22 school year. So it's at just over $7 million. At estimates, we were at $6.7 million. So it did increase, and that's largely due to the reduced funding that Aaron alluded to as a result of lower enrollment than we are projecting when we were preparing the original budget in June. It is an increase over the $4.9 million that we had at last year's estimates. Okay, so looking at the next slides is just the year-to-date update. And I apologize for how small it is. If you do want to see the original version, if you can't blow it up on your screens, we did present this to the board at the first meeting in April, so a couple of weeks ago. And you can see the full report for the board's financial results to date, or as of 6 months, so February 28th, 2022. Just a few things to highlight. So you will see through these slides that there was an increase in salaries and wages for both special education teachers and educational assistants. This was expected as we were able to get some key budget increases approved in the June budget to hire additional staff, as well as we received some of that priorities and partnership funding from the ministry related to spec ed that we were allowed to or able to allocate additional resources to. The one thing that's kind of skewing this report is when it comes to the benefits. So the benefits you'll see have a significant decrease at the moment. Unfortunately, that's not that we saved benefits, but what we were doing internally was we were grouping our employee life and health trust. So ELHT is the ministry kind of trust fund for all benefits for school boards into some core accounts, and we haven't done the reallocation across all of the benefit accounts. So there will be a pickup as we move through this year on the benefit side to make it more in line with where it should be and where we were last year. So in the 2020-2021 year. So benefits are down for now, but will increase kind of as we move through the year and make those allocations. And then computers, there was a decrease in computers, and this is just the timing of the C claims. So the C program does have a different reporting timeline than the school year. So it's not a September to August school year. It's in the April kind of time frame. So there's a bit of a timing depending on when the claims come in and when we're reimbursed for those claims during the year. So there was a change there. Again, with the paraprofessionals, professionals, and technicians, we saw an increase, and that was because we were, the board approved additional CYCs and social workers as part of the budget last year.
So I'll take over for the last portion on the special education, the announced funding that we received for this year. So let's just start with, just so I can explain to everybody, there are two main areas of funding for school boards. There's the grant for student needs, which allows boards a better way to budget in the future years as funding is typically more stable and consistent. And there's also the priorities and partnership funding, also known as PPFs, or formerly Education Program Other or EPO grants. This funding is more temporary and can change from year to year. Now, for the GSNs, there's been a couple of announcements, which are good news stories. So we do have student mental health investment has been added to the GSNs. This is further broken down to two areas. One is the evidence-based mental health programs, and one is resource to support student resilience and mental well-being. There's also a local special education priorities allocation, and this is to help with the local needs of the boards relating to special education. And there's also an increase to the special education equipment amount, the SEA, the per pupil amount. This was the amount that both Adam and I talked about earlier, the amount that is can be transferred forward into future years, or at least historically with our board, has had a portion transferred forward into future years, which is that $712,000 that Adam was speaking of earlier. And again, these funds are not used to impact the deficit or have an impact on the deficit in special education. And finally, there's, and Adam kind of spoke to it as well, there's an increase in the funding based on statistical models that we looked at earlier when Adam was going through the in-year revenues to the board relating to special education. Now, looking at the PPF funding, there's a couple here. Now, some of these are repeats, or at least not repeats, but carry forward or similar to 21-22. So the AQ subsidy, the summer learning supports, they're both very similar to the grant that was received in this current year of 21-22. The tutoring supports, though, that's something completely new, and it's a significant amount of funding. It's about $3.2 million or so over 2 years, 1.6 to be used in the current year, 21-22, and another 1.6 or so to be used next year in 22-23. Now, this isn't necessarily a special education grant, but this funding will definitely have an impact on all our students. So everyone, this concludes our presentation right now relating to the special education funding, both for the current year as well as what to look forward to in the upcoming year. Adam and I are available to answer any questions that anyone may have. Madam Chair, would you like to maybe, if you see any questions, can you?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me monitor the chat. So if anybody has any questions, I'm not sure if my chat is working actually. Yeah, I think it should be. Either just type in the chat hand up or just put your hand up and I'll come around to you. Okay, Maria, you have a question? Go ahead.
Hi there, and thank you for that very informative presentation. I do have a couple of questions. So the projected shortfall for this year is 7.1 million, and you said last year it was 4.9. And I'm just wondering, and my memory might be off, but I've been around for about 8 years. I don't think it's ever been this high, and I feel like in the beginning it was actually pretty close to break even, like a small deficit. It's maybe been around 3. I feel like we're really going in the wrong direction here. So is that accurate, Adam? Or Aaron, sorry.
That's okay. Through you, Madam Chair. It is, and a large part of that, Ms. Laurenco, is the fact that our enrollment was down significantly from where we thought we would be to where we were for the year, and our expenses obviously stayed pretty much constant, given that it's primarily tied to to salaries and benefits. So there wasn't necessarily any reductions in the staffing complement, but the revenue was where we saw a big impact due to enrollment.
Right. And do we know, so when you talk about enrollment, you're talking about enrollment for the whole board, right?
That's correct, yes.
Do we know if our numbers of students receiving spec ed programs has changed?
That's a very good question. I would think it would not have changed as greatly. In fact, I think our numbers might be going up a little bit. Maybe, I don't know if Superintendent Ballo would have more concrete answers on that area.
Which potentially highlights a flaw in the whole funding formula, right? Because we're funded on total enrollment, not how many students are actually receiving these services, which is, I know, something we've discussed before.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know if Superintendent Ballo has anything on that, but I do have a couple more questions. I'll keep going, and Brenda, if you want me to go back in the queue, you can let me know. With the SIA enveloping, so it looks like you're projecting to spend everything that's coming in this year, but you're continuing to carry forward balance. And I'm just wondering, is that because you've sort of planned to have some emergency funds there available in case you need more than is allocated in one given year? Or is it just because all the needs have been met, we don't need that money? Or what's the reason that there's still a balance there? Because there always seems like there's need.
Through you, Madam Chair. No, it's a very good question as well. That funding is made available as well. We've just, for budgeting purposes, have just looked on past history, but if the funding is needed in current year, it is available as well. So that was more on the budgeting side of things, not so much on the actual side. So the funding is made available. It isn't there if it's needed in the current year, or it needs to be accessed in the current year. Again, it was more just I don't want to say a placeholder, but just kind of looking at historically what's happened.
Okay. Thank you. I see another hand up, so I can go back in the queue for my next couple of questions if you want to turn it over to the next person.
Yeah, sure. That'd be great. Actually, thank you. Paul, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, certainly. It's more just for understanding. I noticed, or maybe I didn't notice, but what stood out is that the on salaries, the salaries for the frontline staff, the EAs and the teachers, is lower than the support staff. And I'm just wondering, not challenging it, but just wondering why that is. Why I think the teachers frontline was 22 million and the support staff was 25 million. And I'm just wondering why. I'm sure there's good reason. I just wondered why.
Through you, Madam Chair. I think I have the slide up that you're talking about somewhere. Is this the one? Yeah. So the special education resource teachers are actually teachers in the classroom that help our identified students, and same with the educational assistants salaries and benefits. And then you can argue too that the professional and paraprofessional salaries and benefits also impact our students directly. So really all these areas are really having a direct impact on our students. So the 22.3, the 25.3, and the 9.3 are all impacting the students in the classroom. Let me just go down to the next slide. So total salaries and benefits. So the consultants and such were 1.4 million, supervisors and consultants. Is that the number that I'm just trying to understand the question, because majority is going to the classroom?
No, I missed the point. I thought it was the certs and the EAs were part of the 22 million,
oh, okay.
But the EAs are part of the 25 million. So thank you for pointing that out. That's fine.
Okay.
And then the other question I had is you had 2.2 million of additional expenses. Is there any other expenditures?
Yep.
That's a 4%. So is there some bit more information? Oh, there it is. Sorry.
Yeah.
Is that okay. I should pay more attention.
No, that's okay. There's a lot of stuff here, Sworn. It's no worries there. Yeah, no, it's about like you said, about 4% or so. Travel, textbooks, and things like that. So
yeah, and a large portion of that that we kind of alluded to before relates to that C equipment. So if you saw or recall from one of the previous slides, we had 1.3 million in budgeted C expenses there. So 1.3 of the 2.2 is dedicated to that equipment, and then there's the other needs for Spec Ed.
Thank you.
I've just got one quick question, maybe Maria, before we turn it back over to you. And it's a simple question, but the tutoring piece, Aaron, that you mentioned or Adam mentioned, is that tutoring specific to those students who are identified with special education needs?
No, Madam Chair, it's for any of our students at all. It does not necessarily have to be an identified student. It could be any student that requires some intervention of some sort. That's why putting it in here, it's not really directed for spec ed per se, but I thought it would definitely have an impact on a lot of our identified students. So that's why the only reason I included it in this presentation. But you're right, it's anybody in our board, regardless.
Okay, great. Thanks, Erin. I just wanted to clarify. No worries. Maria, did you want to go ahead?
Yeah, thank you. I don't have too much more, but one thing, conveniently, that slide is still up, but the 2.2 or the 3.6%, I just wanted to clarify, and I think you have been pretty clear, but I just want to be crystal clear. You mentioned travel in there, but I think that's staff travel, right? Because the student transportation would be the transportation budget. So any of that travel there you're talking about is staff, like maybe mileage or whatnot, that type of thing. It's not any student related travel, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. It's primarily in the 2.2 above.
Yeah,
would be our staff traveling out to the different schools should they need to. Sometimes if there's a little bit of transportation within the day for students, that would also be reflected in there. But anything that we're working through our HSTS partner with, so our transportation consortium, that would be reflected in that 2.4 that's shown in the note portion of that slide there.
Okay, thank you. And then could we just go to that really tiny schedule? I just wanted to understand it a little bit better. I did print one off for myself, but I was just trying to understand. You've got two columns there that seem to be almost identical, and they have similar titles, except one says at February 28th. I'm just wondering what's the purpose of those two different columns?
Yeah, great question. So we have two ministry related budget deadlines. So the first one for our original estimates is in June, and then our second one is in December for our revised estimates. And as kind of we've talked about and Erin alluded to, for spec ed, it's enveloped, but it's not necessarily enveloped that you must spend X dollars on teaching staff and X dollars on like other items within special education. So we do have some flexibility to kind of move throughout the year if there's a greater need that needs to happen somewhere else, or for example, if we're unable to fill a permanent position and we've had to pivot to hiring an outside professional or a consultant that's outside of the board, so wouldn't show up in salaries and wages, and now it's going to show up in a professional fee. We have some flexibility that we can move the money around to better reflect kind of where we're actually spending the funds, and then that helps us do our further projections for the upcoming year. So that forecast is just any changes that have happened since December, where we've moved money within the spec ed envelope, but into the different pots or different line items, if that makes sense.
So sorry, is that the first column then? I'm looking at
okay, so the very first column on the left-hand side is the original estimates, the original budget that got approved in June.
Yeah.
Gray column is the revised estimates. So that's our last communication, or the last communication that the board approved, and we submitted to the ministry in December. And then that one that says revised estimate forecast at February 28th. So that third column, that's any kind of movement we've had to do between the different kind of line items. So you can see if you squint really hard.
Yeah, I know.
Like educational assistants, we've had a little drop off there because we haven't been able to fill all the positions throughout the year. There's been a little bit of turnover, and we've reallocated some of those savings to other areas of need kind of throughout the year.
Okay, so the second and third columns, one is from December and one's would be February. So they just hasn't changed much in those 2 months, I guess. Is that correct?
Nothing drastically for spec ed has changed from December to February from a budgetary perspective.
Okay, and then the second half of that schedule to the right, the risk assessment. So it says % received. So is that like actual cash received from the ministry for each category? And why is it all over the place? And one of them's over 1,000. What's meant by risk assessment? Just trying to understand what that is trying to achieve there.
Yeah, great question. So in the risk assessment, we're kind of comparing where we're at to date versus where we were budgeting to date. So that percentage received is received against the budget, basically, for lack of a better description. So we're comparing our actual cost as of February 28th, 2022, compared to our budget costs or our revised estimates cost there. And we're just seeing where we are in terms of our budget or what we were forecasting our overall cost to be to where our actual costs are. And this is how we kind of address whether or not we need to make changes. So if we're seeing that we're trending really high in an area, then we would have the discussion with the spec ed department on kind of, okay, what are we going to do? How are we going to offset maybe some additional needs that we're seeing, or vice versa? If we're underspent, we'll work with spec ed again to make sure that like we're utilizing the funds to the best of our ability. And working with Superintendent Ballo and her team has been great because they're on top of it too. So we provide updates to them on a monthly basis, and then they work with us to say, hey, we're trending lower here. Can we reallocate these funds to this need to make sure that we're servicing our students the best we can? So those are the first two. And then what we do in this risk assessment is we look at where we are this year compared to where we were last year at the same time. And the percentage received in that fourth column there is the percentage received versus last year's revised budget. So then this helps us sort of say, okay, are we on track as of February? Like, are we seeing the same trends that we're spending the same amount of funds in the same sort of areas year over year? Now our budgets will change year over year, but we still like to see, like, when it comes to teaching costs, we know kind of schools in session for 10 months. So we have an expectation of where we should be 6 months into the year, or 12 months into the year, or 6 months out of 12 months into the year, depending on the cost. And we just want to make sure we're trending kind of in the same direction. And if there's something significant, we would investigate it internally to see why there's that drive. So that's why you would see the benefits as a good example there. It looks like we're only at 17% this year, and that's a significant change over last year of like 400 and almost 450,000. But we know what that difference is. It just hasn't been allocated. It's been allocated based on not like a group of employees rather than by department right now.
Sorry, what benefits number are you? Or maybe you're looking at another. There's a whole bunch of benefit numbers. The total. Under
classroom teachers, there's salaries and wages, and then the next line is benefits.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay.
And then if you scroll all the way over to the second to last number or column, you can see, if you squint really, really hard, that's 449,000 difference.
Okay.
And that's comparing this February's cost
compared
to last February's cost.
Okay. So that makes total sense. I think, so percentage received is what you've spent so far, I think. That's what I'm hearing, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Like what's been dispersed. Okay, I missed the word actuals, and I was really focused on this percentage received, so that confused me. But thank you very much. That was very great explanation, and I totally understand, and very important work for sure to help guide you. So thank you, and that's all my questions.
Great. Do we have any other questions before we head to our next presentation? And just a reminder, everyone, if you end up having a question that comes to you later on, it's as we've said, it's a lot of information to process. I'm so grateful to both of you for coming and presenting it, and always coming every year, Aaron, to give us this information. But if anybody has any questions after the fact, please let us know. You can certainly reach out to our team and ask them any clarifying questions or further information. So thank you again, both of you. Enjoy your evening. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you. Have a good night, everyone. Take care.
Take care. So moving on to our next presentation. So that is number 3.2 on our agenda, is After Schools Development Program. And so joining us this evening, we have Angela Delonzo, who is a special education resource teacher, Nicole France, behavior analyst, and I'm sorry, Leanne, I don't want to get this wrong. Can you help me pronounce your name?
Sure, it's just Leanne Ewan.
Amazing. Thanks, Leanne. That's perfect.
No
so
problem.
Leanne Ewan is our psychoeducational consultant, and they are, again, going to present on the After School Skills Development Program. So welcome. Thanks for being here. Oh, Karen, you're there too. You weren't on my list.
Yeah, I know. I just wanted to pop in just to introduce these ladies first.
Yeah.
So they were so gracious to present. They're just three of a team of after-school educators that we have that is comprised of psychometrists and teachers and EAs and CDAs. So there's a whole group of special educators. And Nicole France is sort of heading it up. So she's kind of overseeing the team under Jody and my guidance. And so what they're doing is just sharing snippets of what we do for the after school program. So we have virtual lessons, we have face-to-face, we've moved face-to-face, yay, kids are loving it. And so we have elementary, so kids from grade 3 to grade 8, which is Angela will be talking about that, the CFT, Children's Friendship Training. And then Leanne will be talking about the peers, which is more for the grade 7, 8 and high school kids. So you'll just get a sense of what we are doing with these kids. This is our second year now. And so we just thought it would be a good opportunity to share it with you. So
absolutely. Thanks, take it away.
Thanks so much, Karen and Brenda. I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, there we go. So hello and good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting us to speak tonight. As mentioned, I'm Nicole France. I'm a behavior analyst with the board. We also have Angela and Leanne with me this evening. We're so happy to share some information about the After School Skills Development Program that we are supporting this year. So social skills are important for getting along with and relating to others, negotiating the school years, and making friends. Understanding social behavior and using social skills can be challenging for some of our students, making it difficult to navigate many social situations or create meaningful relationships with peers. For the second year, we were able to offer 2 evidence-based social skills curriculums for our after-school skills development program. Through proven strategies such as explicit instruction, modeling, rehearsal, and reinforcement, the program's Children's Friendship Training and the Program for Education and Enrichment of Relational Skills, or peers, teaches our students valid social skills known to be used by socially successful people from a foundational level to higher level skills. The Children's Friendship Training program is 12 weeks long and offered to students from grade 2 to 6, and the peers program is 16 weeks long and offered to students from grade 7 to grade 12. We were able to modify both of the programs for virtual delivery, and although we began all of our groups virtually this year due to COVID restrictions in place, we have since moved 4 of our groups to in-person delivery. Of our 6 groups currently running, we have 2 that are continuing to be run virtually and 4 that are being run in person in Milton, Oakville, and Burlington. The staff groups running the programs are comprised of at least 1 teacher, CERT or SET, and educational assistants, as well as some CYCs, psychoeducational consultants, behavior analysts, speech language pathologists, and communicative disorders assistants. We have 41 students participating in Children's Friendship Training and peers this year from 21 different schools from across Georgetown, Milton, Oakville, and Burlington. In order to participate in the program, student names are put forward by the school's CERT, and parents are contacted to see if they are interested in participating. Screening meetings with the student and the parents or guardians are then conducted in order to help form groups that are well matched. Since one of the foundations of the program is behavioral rehearsal, one goal of the screening is to help form groups of students with similar interests so they can practice these social skills together. Another goal of the screening is to determine the student's interest in the program. Because friendship is a choice, students need to choose to want to learn the skills, and for the program to be successful, it requires that the students are motivated to learn, to make friends and keep friends and practice these skills. During the screening, we also share some additional information about the program and the time commitments that it would entail so that parents or guardians can determine if they're able to commit. For any students that were put forward to participate in the program but were not able to participate this year, we have kept their information so that they can be considered again in the future. This year, in addition to the student session, we are offering a parent and guardian session. Through these sessions, we teach caregivers how to assist their children in the development and maintenance of relationships so that the skills we teach the students in the groups will more easily generalize to other settings and improvements will maintain over time. Generalization of the skills is promoted by caregivers supporting the completion of weekly practice assignments, by practicing the skills with their child, and by providing social coaching not only during the group, but long after as well. The parent and guardian sessions are held virtually. We hold one parent and guardian session for all of our caregivers with students in the Children's Friendship Training Group, and one session for all of our caregivers with students in the peers group. The parent and guardian sessions are interactive and focus on reviewing, sharing, and troubleshooting the weekly homework assignments, reviewing the student lesson content and relevant information for supporting their children to utilize these skills, and then planning the weekly homework practice and reviewing social coaching tips.
Angela, your mic is muted. Okay.
Okay. Children's Friendship Training is an evidence-based group format parent-assisted social skills intervention for children ages 6 to 12. It has been proven effective with children who have autism spectrum disorder, ADHD, or other social challenges who demonstrate emergent social skills and are motivated to make and keep friends. The Children's Friendship Training Program consists of 12 consecutive weeks of group sessions with both a child component and a parent-guardian component. Each week, children are taught critical social skills and provided with a demonstration of these skills.
I'm gonna go brush my teeth in that one. Okay, I'll see you upstairs.
Are given the opportunity to practice through role play and during real play. They are then provided with homework assignment to continue to practice. Parents and guardians are then provided with tips on how they can assist their child with learning these skills to make and keep friends through their coaching and feedback while completing homework assignments. So what does a CFT session look like? In the first part of the session, we focus on homework review. Children report back to the group on the results of their weekly homework assignment. This could be making a group phone call or slipping into a group at school. The motivation for children to do their homework comes from earning the group points for participation. The didactic lesson is run by the leader. This helps the children attend to the key situations in their world and lay the groundwork for practice in our sessions and at home. Each week there's a new focus, but we always review and consolidate information learned from the week before. The didactic lesson follows a typical classroom setting with the leader asking questions and students participating in a group discussion. For the role play demonstration, the facilitators model and demonstrate the skills and also use videos examples when it's available. So we know that children learn more from doing something than talking about it. So during the behavioral rehearsal, students break out into groups to practice their skills. The real play portion. This is the segment that children like the most. They get to play board games in class, we get to use the gym, or we even go outside. Our play portion keeps the children interested and solidifies the rules for them. For the end of session reunification, parents and guardians join the group. The most important part is the brief individual attention that our group leaders give to the homework assignments. This stresses the importance of homework completion every week. So the CFT lesson topics include making a good first impression, playing fairly and resolving conflicts, having two-way conversations, handling rejection, teasing and bullying, joining others at play, and being a good host. And so here's a few photos from our in-person sessions. We are blessed to have 4 amazing teams of educators run the CFT sessions, both in person and virtually. They are passionate and enthusiastic staff members who bring their knowledge and expertise and positivity to each session. And during the real play part of our session, the focus is on good sportsmanship. Group leaders are circulating and available for skill coaching at this time. And in our virtual groups, there are breakout rooms with pairs of students and a group leader. Here are some of the comments that we've had so far from parents and guardians over the last 9 weeks of friendship training. I'm just going to give you a few moments to read over some of the quotes. And that's it for children's friendship training. So now I'm going to pass it over to Leanne to discuss the peers program.
Thanks so much, Angela. Good evening, everyone. As Nicole has already mentioned, the Peers program is a 16-week long program and is offered to students from grade 7 to grade 12. And currently the group for the younger band of teens is run virtually, and the older band started off virtually but is now in person. So Peers is an evidence-based social skills intervention for motivated adolescents who are interested in making and keeping friends. The intervention is based on evidence that really focuses on 3 core tenets. The first one being common social errors that are often committed by those with autism spectrum disorder and or those with social skills deficits. Also focuses on the core social skills that are really needed to make and keep friends, and also really looking at the sort of the ecologically valid ways that socially accepted teens handle peer conflict and rejection. So really hoping to pass on to those skills onto the participants of the group. So this program was initially developed for individuals with autism spectrum disorder. And while there is less research available, the initial data has shown that Peers is actually effective for individuals with other conditions as well, such as ADHD, so attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, intellectual disability, social anxiety, depression, fetal alcohol syndrome disorder. And the rationale for this is that really the intervention, because the intervention focuses on those 3 core elements that I just described, the lessons can then be really applicable to anyone that is in need of instruction in these areas. So a lot of the content often circles back to the idea of finding common interests. So research has shown that some common pitfalls with students who struggle with social skills is that they might often, for example, talk about whatever it is they like with little regard to whatever the other person is interested in, or they might ask questions without sharing anything about themselves, among other things. So the problem with these situations is that they fail to identify common interests, which we know is so important because it forms the foundation of establishing friendships. So if we look at Peers really targets ways in which teens can be taught to find common interests and really build solid friendships. So not surprisingly then, if you look at the top topics covered, I'm sorry that ended up being kind of small, is that the first session really kicks off with how to find common interests by trading information and the various steps to do so, for example, by having two-way conversations and appropriately using humor. And once these skills are well practiced, the lessons move into using these skills in conversation. So then the focus becomes like how to enter and exit conversations between peers, how to host get-togethers, and then how to handle various forms of disagreement and conflicts, including things like handling teasing, bullying, rumors, and gossip. And of course, the program does end with a final review and a graduation party, which is really to celebrate the success of these teens. It is a 16-week program. It's a huge commitment. And so really just to end it off with a bang, just to really celebrate the success and graduate. So here's what a typical peer session would look like. Much of this structure is actually very similar to that described by Angela for CFT. So while the content might differ from week to week, the structure is the same, and we always build on what was learned in previous weeks. And the idea is then to sort of consolidate that learning. So we always start off with a homework review or check-in. And this really gives us an opportunity to take a pulse, if you will, on how the teens are consolidating the information or whether or not they have been able to put these skills into practice. Next is the didactic lesson portion, which usually includes dialogues between the facilitator and the students, role play demonstrations, and really like good opportunities to participate in perspective taking questions, really giving the teens an opportunity to think about, you know, what it's like for the other person, what it might be like for them in various situations. Now, as many of these skills don't come naturally for students enrolled in our program, opportunities to practice these skills in the form of behavioral rehearsals or role plays, and also an extension in group socialization activities like games becomes really integral parts of each session. So if we think of behavioral rehearsals, then these opportunities to role play the various skills really allows the teens to practice their learning while also being coached at the same time in a really safe environment. And then the games portion really gives the teens an opportunity to continue practicing their skills in a more natural environment, which might simulate what a get-together might look like. So we usually end the session with a discussion of the homework for the upcoming week. And again, the rationale is really to encourage practice beyond the sessions. So it can really help each of the teens consolidate their skills. And because we have the parent sessions built into the program, like what Nicole described, there's a lot more accountability in getting these homework exercises completed and really getting those opportunities to practice those skills outside of the session. So these are some photos from our first and second in-person sessions. As we had mentioned prior to these, our sessions were virtual. And I can tell you that all the teens agreed that they preferred in-person, and everyone truly really had a really great time, including us as facilitators as well. It was really great to be in person. And playing games in person was really a lot of fun as well. And you can really see here in the pictures that the teens were trying to use when we were in person, we can see that the teens are really trying to use some of those tips that were addressed in the lessons, sort of in vivo, like live in the group. So for example, they might be practicing their good sportsmanship, and then we would be positively reinforcing them for using those types of skills in their groups. So here's an example of a role play that two students were engaged in. The lesson that week was how to host a get-together. So that lesson included elements of planning a get-together, what happens during a get-together, for example, when guests show up, and then how to end a get-together. So here we're going to show you a clip that was very specific to just beginning a get-together. So before we begin, though, I just mentioned to you that the video does pick up on some of the dialogue from another group. So I'm going to try to prime your ears to just focusing on the group that's right in view, if that helps.
So you want to watch a movie? You want to watch a movie? Hello. How are you? I'm good. Thanks for inviting me. Come on in. Leanne, this is Addison. This is Addison.
Hi, Addison. Hi, Leanne. Nice to meet you. You too.
Anyways, you want to take some more drink?
I'm good for now.
All right. No, hey, you want to take a drink?
That's
a great idea. Let's go on Netflix right now. Sure.
You can hang out just for a second again. I just want to give it more, right? That's okay. Let's just try again. So we'll start with the introduction. We'll offer some food or drink. That's okay. It doesn't have to be in order necessarily, right? You did a really nice job of offering some food or drink. You said no thank you, and you can take that as an opportunity to honor. We're all going to try back in. Tie back in. Got it. Go ahead.
Should I just start from the beginning? Is that going to be easier for you to start from the beginning?
Is that going to be easier for you to start from the beginning? Okay.
Hey,
yeah, for sure. Yeah. Okay.
Just going to pause that for a second to see if I can let it catch up.
Yeah, I would like you to meet that. Hey, what's up? Anyway, time for the tour. Right here is the bro. This one is the back. These are the stairs to the basement. These are the stairs to the stairs. And here's one of the big room where I put like my TV and stuff. There's a water go. It's like anything. Water go.
I'm good for now. Thanks for offering.
All right. What do you want to do anyway?
You can choose. I'm fine with whatever.
For sure.
Great job.
You want to watch the movie?
Okay. There's a bit of a lag there. But I think, oops, hang on. We'll just stay on this slide. But so if we just think back to the video, you could see that the student was going through the steps and when there was a missing step or whenever he felt stuck, we were able to time out and really provide some real-time social coaching around this. And as a cue, we also had the steps written on the board. So you might have seen him sort of looking to his right where the whiteboard was. And we had an EA there sort of point to the steps as he was going along. And so there's a lot of support in terms of trying to do these role plays with the social coaching. And so that is typically what a role play or behavioral rehearsal would look like. Okay, so here on this slide, we've just completed session 10 and we have 6 more sessions left. So from the sessions that have occurred so far, these were some of the comments that were mentioned to us either in passing or over email during the parent sessions. So as a whole, most parents have indicated that they've noticed that their teen appears to have greater confidence and that their ability to carry out conversations beyond 1 or 2 exchanges have really improved. So I'm going to give you an opportunity just to read this and before we flip over to the next slide. And that concludes our brief presentation. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thanks so much. So that was a lot of awesome information. I don't think I was fully aware of all of the elements of that program, or of the programs. So thank you so much for presenting that. I do have a quick question, but I wanted to open up the floor to my fellow SEAC committee members. If anybody has a question before I ask mine. Look if anybody has a hand up. No? Okay, so I actually just had a question, and I apologize if I missed it in there, but I had a question around the peer program. So a couple of things. So how is that referral made? Like how do our students connect in with that program? That would be my first question, I guess.
I can maybe answer that question. So it's generally the department heads or the life skill teachers that refer the students. Of course, parents have to consent to it and the student has to be willing. So they will ask the student, do you want to be engaged in this? If they say no or not really, then we found that it's not really successful for them. So it's more, we need to ensure that there's a commitment on the parent part and the student part to be involved. Okay. So yeah, so it's a referral from the usually the department head or the CERT from the grade 7-8 students.
Okay. And then, the other thing I'm thinking as you're talking is, this is something that a whole host of teens could benefit from that are not necessarily identified. I mean, I'm thinking of, there's just teens that have a hard time in the absence of a diagnosis. They just have a hard time making those connections, keeping those connections, whether they've been through a rough go friendship wise and they don't know where to connect. Some of those elements, we see it a lot. Kids who don't know how to make that reach out, who don't know how to make that initial invitation, who can't put themselves out there or don't know what to do when something, comes their way. And so, and understanding that this program has specifically been developed for students with certain identifications, although you're expanding that, has there ever been any thought to taking elements of this program and incorporating those into our typical student body or elements of that to be shared in different ways, in different capacities? Because I'm telling you, there's a ton of social skills there that a lot of our teens, I think, could greatly benefit from, especially given what we've just come out of the last 2 years.
Yeah, and I mean, I use it with my own children. I think we as parents just assume, or educators, kids pick this up naturally. Even typical kids have, like, even kids without issues have a hard time. Like, so I think educators sort of embed that, CYCs embed it when they come in to do class sessions. It's just the time commitment that this program insists on, and it's very, you have to follow like the script. They don't like you to veer off because you have to go for training for the peers before you can actually train. So all of the people here tonight and all of our teachers and peers are trained in peers. So you can't even teach it unless you were. But you're right, Brenda. There are snippets that we need to embed just general classrooms every day so that they're, you know, they're socialized.
Yeah, like I'm even thinking, like, I mean, Karen, now that I know about it, I'm going to look into it a little bit more. But, you know, and I'm not saying, you know, my son's probably going to watch this at some point and be like, Mom, what do you mean? But, you know, my point is that to your, you know, to what you just said is, it would be wonderful if there was some sort of element of this, whether it be an FAQ, whether it be helpful hints, whether it be key takeaways that have come out of this program that could be shared with parents if they wanted to do some of this at home, or if they wanted to do some of this. So maybe just something, you know, for you to think about as you're going through, if there was a capacity to create a resource document that we could maybe, you know, benefit from. But Jody, I see you have your hand up. So I don't want to keep talking. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. Thanks. I just wanted to add that, and it was mentioned that we do accept referrals for students that are not necessarily identified with ASD, but are struggling with other, you know, with social issues. So the funding, actually, Erin mentioned it through the funding. It was an additional funding they received that's now been rolled in. So we're excited to be able to continue this, you know, next year. And we do look at students. We asked right away, actually, could we have students that don't have ASD participate in this program? And the answer is yes from the ministry. So that was exciting for us because we really did want to use this funding to support as many students as we can. So.
And then do you have, I just have a question. So do you have students who help as part of this who are not part of the, who are not, how am I putting this properly? Do you have students that, you know, maybe need extra bodies? Maybe you need like students who come in and participate in some of the role playing, or who come in and sort of provide some of that additional support. I wonder if that's something that, you know, you do, or if you've thought about doing for those students who may want to, you know, be a part of this, but not be a part of this. Do you know what I'm saying? Like maybe as a volunteer opportunity, or maybe as a way to sort of get involved. I don't know. I think it's I can't believe I didn't know about it. I think it's an amazing program.
It is a great program, and I appreciate your feedback, and we definitely will consider those. I know Nicole is an expert. She has actually supported this program in the community as well, so we are so grateful to have her support and expertise. And the other additional thing I just wanted to add is that last year we were able to train a large number of staff in the peers program. So we have all of our SLPs, all of our BAs, and I know I'm missing some groups, so I'm going to apologize. I think our ICYCs. Ciac, see, I knew. I was like, I'm going to miss because I wasn't quite, but they're all trained in this. So that's exciting. And then that gives us lots of staff to, you know, when this becomes available to, you know, run next year, we have the staff to do it. But they're also, if it can happen within a school, we encourage it to happen within the school as well. So, you know, it becomes a little bit more challenging to find people and groups of peers that have that same, but you know, is something that is available to us, and we were grateful to be able to actually, it worked out. There's one opportunity to run it virtually. We had the training virtual. Otherwise, it's, you know, going to California and costing a small fortune. So this was a great opportunity to do it virtual in these times. So yeah.
I do. I truly, you know, I truly think this is fantastic. Again, for the general population, but I can absolutely see the benefit that this would provide for those students who have been identified, or not necessarily, and like we said, those identifications, but just, you know, severe social anxiety, or have come out of COVID and really had a hard time, or whatever that, whatever else has been identified. I love this. I want to follow up, or maybe we'll have you guys back to do a bit of a refresher and an update. And that's not to take anything away from all the other programs, but this one just obviously spoke to me. I'm a teen mom, so it really just spoke to me. But wonderful work, you guys. I continue to be amazed by the programming that we offer. Does anybody have any questions or comments? I know Tracy just said, sounds like a great program that many could benefit from, for sure. So if we have questions for you guys, after the fact, we can reach out and ask?
Absolutely. Yep.
Awesome. Amazing. Thank you again so much. Thanks for all the work that you do. Thanks for the enthusiasm. It definitely comes through. I can tell you're proud of the work you do, and I can tell you're very proud of this programming. So thanks, and continue the great job.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys. Have a great night.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Okay. I don't know how to follow that up because that was pretty awesome. So we're moving on to item number 4, which is the approval of the minutes. So you would have all been provided with a copy of the minutes from our last meeting. So I'm wondering if I could get someone to move the minutes of the March 28th, 2022 SEAC meeting.
This is Rick. I'll move it.
Thanks, Rick. Moved by Rick, seconded. Anyone? Great, thanks, Tracy. Seconded by Tracy. Okay, item number 5 is business arising from the previous meetings. I've got nothing here. The chart was in the meeting package. Yeah, Maria, you have a question?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if there's any updates on this letter to the ministry, and particularly given what we heard today in our budget presentation, you know, it would be a pretty important item. So I just don't know if there's anything happening there.
Yeah, I mean, I can be fully transparent. I've got no update. I haven't focused on this. So I don't have any update. And Samantha's on mat leave. So, you know, it's something that we could probably move forward again and take a look at. So maybe, Andrea, maybe we can make a note. Maybe make a note just to follow up with some of the individuals listed on there and just see if we can take another revisit with this, if you don't mind.
Sorry, just a small housekeeping item. I think Liesl had to step down from the committee.
She did.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
she
did.
probably taken off there.
Yeah, so we'll have to update that for sure. Yeah, and then what we can do is we can remove that to the top and just see if the others that are listed on there have the ability to get this done and do some consultation with staff on, you know, what we want to say and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, let's make it a note, and I'll try to see if we can have an update for the next meeting on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, so item number 6 is the Special Education Board Policy Review. There are no policies for review this evening. Moving on to item number 7, which is the special 7.1, the Special Education Plan. And that would be Superintendent Ballo, who would be speaking to that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the purpose of our meeting tonight for this item will simply be to provide an update and share a timeline with SEAC with regards to our special education plan. So I would like to review that with the group. At the March 28th meeting, we had the item added as a SEAC agenda item, and we agreed at that time that we would follow the same process as last year to form a subcommittee and send a form to members for input. March 29th, the email was sent and the form was sent to SEAC. April 20th, our subcommittee feedback was due. We did accept a submission on April 21st. We have received some information and some feedback from Voice, ABC, and a member at large. In the month of April, our staff have been reviewing the plan and reviewing the feedback and working on some revisions. And in May, we will be meeting with the subcommittee. We've had one member from SEAC put their name forward for the subcommittee, so we're very open. If someone else would still like to participate in that, if you would, you can certainly email Andrea Hughes and she'll make note of that. So we will be planning a meeting in May with the subcommittee, which does include staff, to review the SEAC feedback, as well as the minority reports that we received in 2021. We have a minority report from ABC and the LDAHH. So we would like to get into more detail with regards to both of those minority reports. The plan would be then for May 20th to share the red line draft, which we did last year, and it seemed to be very well received. We'll also include a summary of the changes and the SEAC feedback that was emailed. Andrew is going to put that together in the package, so you have all of those pieces when you review the red line draft. So the goal will be to get that to SEAC by May 20th, so that everybody will have it in advance of our May 30th SEAC meeting. And then at May 30th meeting, I think we'll have a more fulsome discussion. Everyone will have had the red line version of the plan, and we will include that in our package with regards to it being a final draft or semi-proposed final draft. We still have the June 13th meeting as well, which we've earmarked as our last SEAC meeting, and we will allocate any time that we may still need at the June 13th meeting. And then lastly, we will submit the link and the checklist to the ministry for July 13th. That date has remained the same. There have been no changes with regards to the deadline or the checklist for that matter. And basically that's what our process is at this time. And I'm happy to answer any questions that there may be. We are working on the summary of changes, as I've noted. It really did lend itself well to being able to summarize all of the more significant points that weren't just edits. And I also thought earlier today about our guideline that we created for SEAC. So every time, you know, we kind of go back to the list of things to include. That was a pretty significant accomplishment that SEAC participated in December. So we will be making notation of that as well, maybe in our SEAC section, that there is a guideline that was created by the committee.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Thanks for reminding us of that. Does anybody have any questions at all for Stephanie? Yeah, Maria, go ahead.
Just one quick one. If I remember correctly from last year, all of the SEAC members received the feedback that was submitted to the committee. And I'm just wondering if that's happening again, or am I remembering wrong? I thought we did. I thought it was shared with the full committee.
Yeah, you're remembering correctly, Maria. We shared it in May when we shared the red line version of the Spec Ed plan. So we'll be doing the same thing.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. Thanks, Stephanie. Is there any other questions on this? If not, I look forward to reviewing that at our next meeting. So thanks very much for all the work that's gone in, and thanks to those who have submitted feedback, and to the committee that's been working on that. So thanks everybody for your contributions. Okay, moving on to item number 8, the board committee updates. I don't know how many updates we're going to have here, but there hasn't been a lot of meetings. So just moving through these. 8.1 Mental Health and Wellbeing Advisory Steering Committee. Unless I've completely missed something, I don't believe we've had a meeting. Diane, am I correct? In there. No, okay, I'm pretty sure we haven't. De-streaming committee, is there an update from the de-streaming committee at all? Has there been a meeting at all?
So I'm not aware of any meeting. I don't think there has been, and I'm not sure when the next one is, but I did miss one or two as well, but I haven't heard anything. And I'm going to save you some time when you get to STEAM committee, unless Nancy has something that I'm not aware of any meetings there either. So I think you were right. This is going to be a quick one.
Yeah. Yeah. And in your absence, Maria, Jody did fill in on the de-streaming committee. I think there had been maybe I'm getting it wrong. No, I think there had been a meeting. Maybe it was STEAM. But in any event, Jody was kind enough to jump in for some of the updates and some of these meetings for those of us who were not able to attend.
That's great. I did miss some, I know, yeah.
Yeah, no, it was super helpful. So that's great. Equity Audit Committee, there's no update, and Equity and Inclusion Committee, there is no update. So that was quick. Back over to item number 9, which is communications to SEAC. So our superintendent's report. So Stephanie, you're back up again.
Okay, thank you very much. So we'll start with an update around student supports, programs, events that are taking place. On Thursday, April the 21st, Project Search, Halton Partnership held their first skills assessment day for new interns at St. Francis Xavier Secondary School. New candidates participated in a series of skill stations, and current interns were on site to present their intern experiences for parents, staff, and volunteers for future candidates, and they did an amazing job as student leaders. We have a new collaborative agreement with Community Living Oakville along the same lines. Community Living Oakville received funding through Ontario Trillium Foundation to run the job launch program in all secondary schools within our board for September 2022. Some of the highlights are Community Living Oakville will hire an employment specialist who will put together a 6-week program. It'll be 1-hour session per week for youth with developmental disabilities in our board. This opportunity is for any school within Halton Catholic with a class with people with support needs, life skills students age range 16 plus. The program would run for the next school year and will be offered throughout the year pending the preference and schedules of schools. So they'll be able to have a number of topics covered and supported through the Oakville Community Living. Topics will include job readiness, first impressions, health and safety, including COVID-19 protocols, job search, and how to access job boards, youth at work, and summer work, resume writing, and interview preparation. The employment specialist will come to the class in person or do the session virtually, and there's no cost to our board, which Aaron Lofts will be happy about. This is a great collaboration with the CLO and can provide students with expertise on preparing them for employment. So we're really excited to be able to offer another program for our students at secondary where they can learn a number of job skills. And it's great because it will be happening right in the classroom. We have, as Aaron mentioned earlier, we have a number of PPFs and TPAs that we have been accessing funds. We have a collaboration with the LDAHH Reading Rocks program, and through this year, we were able to put forward 10 names to the association to participate in the Spring Reading Rocks program. The full cost of the 8-week virtual program was funded for families. In this effective instructional program, students are paired with a trained tutor who uses hands-on activities and games to teach the essential literacy concepts of phonics, sight words, and fluency while building students' motivation and fostering self-regulation. We have a spring coding camp that's being run through Learn Style. Through the After School Skills Development Funding, which you just learned more about. 33 names were submitted by schools to participate in the virtual After School Coding Club. The clubs were open to students with ASD who would benefit from making social connections while building coding skills. And I do need to just pause to acknowledge Angela, Amy, and Nicole for all of their work, and Jody and Karen. You know, there's something to be said about bringing an update through my report and hearing the passion that these educators have. And it's been a tremendous undertaking that started last year. We're really grateful for the huge impact that they're making. Special education open houses, some have taken place and some are yet to take place. The Milton STC is was April 5th. And April 21st with individual parent meetings, and the Oakville STC was April 12th, again with individual meetings. The Burlington STC open house was held on April the 11th. The gifted open houses will take place. Oakville is April 28th, and Burlington and Milton are April 29th. Both the Georgetown and Milton ESC open houses are May 10th. And the Oakville and Burlington ESC open houses are May 19th. We're very excited to be able to share information about these classes with potential students and families. Funding for professional assessments, as was mentioned earlier in the presentation, has been received from the ministry, and we are busy planning what to do with those funds. We have committed to providing approximately 35 to 40 assessments starting right now through the summer. And I do appreciate Oliver and his team for working through the planning that goes with being able to allocate those funds as quickly as we can. As an information item, the special education department is proceeding with some year-end events that really have been on hold for the last 2 years. We wanted to, let SEAC know what we are planning. We certainly look forward to bringing back updates in future reports. The 10th annual Best Buddies Life Skills semi-formal dinner and dance is going to be held at St. Ignatius of Loyola School on May 19th, and they've taken the lead in organizing that. This event is for current secondary students and grade 8 students who are going into a life skills program next year. So it's a great opportunity for transition to visit the school as well. This year's theme is a sweet night of friendship, and parents and guardians or support workers are also invited to attend with their child or student. We are also planning a secondary life skills track and field event in May, again at the end of May, and St. FX will be hosting all students who are in life skills programs. Students will participate in developmentally appropriate track and field events, both on the field and on the track. Schools are welcome to include their best buddies when organizing support for students to attend this event. And elementary Special Olympics track and field will be held in June. It'll be June 1st. Elementary special needs students will participate in fun activities and events, including a 100-meter race to end the day. And lastly, we are also planning for the DHH picnic, which has been put on pause so that we can offer that in May. So amongst many things, there's lots of really great planning that's happening for students as we look towards the end of a school year. Earlier, again, tutoring funds were mentioned, and I just wanted to touch upon it. Our program services department, which includes special education, student success, and curriculum, are offering multiple spring and summer tutoring opportunities for students and families through the funding that was already mentioned that supports the Learning Recovery Action Plan. Our spring sessions started in April and run through to the end of June and are open to all students. And we're really in the preliminary sort of planning stages for the summer. As Aaron, Superintendent Lofts mentioned, there's quite a bit of money that has been provided to school boards, and with that comes quite a bit of planning. We currently are offering a grade 1 to 8 after school math and literacy tutoring, again, for our elementary schools, and we are in the planning process of collecting information from schools, as well as a grade 9 math after school tutoring program and elementary and secondary learn style tutoring, which will focus on foundational skills. You would recall we had Learn Style do a presentation. They do all of our training for SIA, and we are collaborating with them, and they've been excellent at getting the tutoring up and running. So we do look forward to bringing back more updates as we continue to expand what the tutoring offerings are. And lastly, professional development. We had a new CERT CLC. It took place on April the 11th. Provided training on growth mindset, review of external psych assessments, assessment accommodations, and preparing for case conferences. Halton FASD launched a new webinar called Moving Forward After Diagnosis, and the creation of which was supported by Oliver Foise, Andrea Jones, and Denise Culley from our school board. And 2 updates today with regards to mental health and well-being. Mental Health Awareness Week will take place the first week of May, same week as Catholic Education Week. Our team of CYCs and social workers have created and shared a system-wide resource kit for schools to use. The resources highlight materials from School Mental Health Ontario and CMHA. The kit includes a daily theme, prayer, announcement, reflections, student learning opportunities, connections to Catholic school teachings, and the Ontario Catholic graduate expectations, as well as resources that are culturally responsive, focus on special education, and have a home parent component. There will be a number of social media posts and information that will be shared leading into the week. We did have a student, we had a meeting actually with the Student Senate Mental Health Subcommittee meeting, and it provided a great opportunity for our leadership team and the Student Senate to meet to discuss the mental health and wellness needs of Halton Catholic students. The meeting began with a general overview presentation from our team, which included a review of our board's tiered model of intervention for supporting students, the mental health and addiction strategy, our action plan, the school mental health action plan, and it really led to some really amazing discussion. We have some excellent student leaders who are part of that committee. Some important points and items were raised by the students, including questions around the promotion of mental health and wellness, access to supports. We talked about the mental health literacy lessons that are taking place in all of our schools this year, and the inclusion. We've invited our Student Senate subcommittee to be part of our revision of the board's mental health strategy. So we have our 3 student trustees who do sit on our steering committee, but we do have a subcommittee sort of tying back to the earlier update around the mental health committee that will be coming together as a subcommittee to provide some updates and gather some further input on our strategy. So that's all that I have. And Brenda, as you can see, it's been a busy time.
I was going to say, that's all you have, Stephanie? You got,
that's all I have.
Yeah, you have nothing else?
I know, but I'm surrounded by amazing people, and you know, we really appreciate working with all of our departments and all of our staff who are just let's do it people, and it's just amazing to see it. So
yeah,
good things happening.
Yeah, I agree. And I was making a bunch of notes, and one of the questions I have is, and I know Tracy's here, but about the FASD guide. I love that, and I can imagine even if it's been developed specifically for FASD, that's got to be something that any parent that's gone through a diagnosis could benefit from, and that's pretty amazing. So is that a resource? You know, could that be shared with our group maybe to send back to their associations? Is that okay? I don't know.
It's a new webinar. I mean, I've got Denise on the line. She's certainly welcome to contribute if there's something that she'd looked at, and Oliver and Andrea.
Okay.
It is a new webinar. I haven't seen it. It's just been launched, but it's certainly something that I would take back. And if it's something that would be appropriate and beneficial to parents, I can't see why not.
I think, and sorry, Oliver, for sure, speaking a sec, but you know, I know that again, certainly there are specific dynamics of different diagnoses that are important for the family that's been diagnosed with their child. But you know, a lot of what parents go through is universal. It's right. There's no silo there in how they process it, how they deal with it, the emotions they go through, the expectations, the fears, all of those things. And I don't think we have enough resources like that for families. And I truly believe that when a family has received a diagnosis, the next steps will dictate the trajectory of how they deal with that journey. So I think this is a fantastic, I'd love to learn a bit more. Oliver, is it something that others could access, or Denise and anybody?
I can let Denise speak to it too. I would just say that there was significant work that went into it, and we were lucky through Rock, who took the lead, to also have an IT specialist involved in that, who did a lot of work in putting it together. So the method and the framework is certainly something that could be used, but it would involve, I think, some significant expertise on that end, not just from the content, but kind of just the logistics and the creation on the production side of it. Sure. I don't know, Denise, if you want to.
Hi, yeah, it was partially funded by a grant and also some revenue from the Halton FASD resource team and the trainings that we do. It's about $10,000 to pay the developer to work with us to develop the content. You can access it at rockonlinelearn.ca, and I can put the link or send the link out to everybody in the minutes. It's that we've developed a number of webinars. There's one for FASD and youth justice. So this was one about moving forward after diagnosis. And you're right, Brent, there's nuggets in there for all exceptionalities and for sort of, you know, moving forward with a really cohesive plan for families after they've received a diagnosis.
Yeah, well done. Congratulations. And yeah, Denise, if you don't mind sharing that, and Oliver, thank you. That's a fantastic, yeah, that's great. That's great news. Thank you. That's amazing. And I had another question, but it's gone. And just a really quick comment. You mentioned School Mental Health Ontario, and I always hear about them peripherally, or I hear them about things like this, but I've actually had the privilege lately of working with some of the School Mental Health Ontario individuals in another hat that I wear, and I'm going to be presenting alongside them for some mental health resources for kids with special needs and their families at the Canadian Pediatric Society Conference. So I'm super excited, and it's been really neat to work with them in a different capacity to see the way they develop programs, the way they look at things, you know, the considerations that they give, and it's sort of given me a new appreciation for the work they're doing at School Mental Health Ontario. So I definitely look forward to our Mental Health Awareness Week for sure, alongside our Catholic Education Week. So thanks for sharing that.
You're welcome. And you made me think about School Mental Health has just released a new document for special education students. So our goal is to bring that back. They have a wealth of resources, and we meet with them monthly, and I always learn something. They're amazing, and they're very good at looking at what the need is and working together to provide something. So I would like to bring in my next update something around the new Spec Ed program resource guide that they put together. It's really interesting.
Yeah, that would be great, Stephanie. Thank you. Sorry, everybody, to monopolize that. Maria, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. That was quite the report. Lots of great stuff happening. Especially excited about the return of the in-person events for students. Just a question about the life skills dance. I know in the past SEAC members have also been invited to attend. Is that an invitation still there, or are we trying to limit maybe people this year? I don't know.
I would say let me confirm that. I can touch base with the school. I know that they're just at the initial stages of planning that, and then I can follow up with SEAC with the details if that's an opportunity.
Okay, thank you. And another question, I thought I had read somewhere, I don't know now if it was the minutes or that we were due to get an ONSIS update at this meeting. Was I wrong about that, or?
No, I do know that the ONSIS update has typically been provided in the spring. We have consulted with IT and they're working on it. I think with the new Power School this year and merging all of that information, it's going to take them a little longer. So we will continue to touch base with them and see if we can bring it to a future meeting.
Okay, and have we had any updates this year? I think we're supposed to get it twice a year, is that correct? I thought I read that in the Spec Ed plan, but again, I could be wrong.
Yeah, I don't think that we have, Maria, only because it's been a bit of a struggle to gather that data. So we are looking for ways to be able to pull the information.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Right. Okay, thank you so much, Stephanie, and yeah, it's great work. Thank you very much. 9.2, the trustee report. Trustee Guzzo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So there was only 2 board meetings this month, with 1 special called. There was no policy meeting this month because of it falling during Holy Week, which is normal. So our next policy meeting won't be until the second week of May. Believe it or not, there was very little motions on the table for the 2 meetings. One of them being an expansion to our Human Rights and Equity Department, which passed, which will now see 3 additional positions added to that department, in addition to an admin assistant. We also discussed the student liaison officer at our last board meeting. For those of you who are aware, we had paused it back in December, pending results of a survey that went out and stakeholder feedback. There's been further pause until such time as certain items can be implemented, which are due to be back at the May 17th meeting. Sorry, my apologies. Also, we had Director Daly announced his departure from us as effective July 31st this year. He has taken a position at St. Michael's College, so we are sad to see him go. But the trustees are now tasked with hiring a new director for the next school year. Last week, the trustees attended the Oxta AGM, where the new executive was put into place. Trustee Janet Horner is now our regional representative for our board. And there was a special called meeting last week, Easter Monday actually, to deal with the masking and the mandates, and to send our concerns to the government, to the Minister of Health, in regards to the increased COVID cases that we're seeing in the schools with the increased absenteeism since the return to March break and the lifting of the mask mandates. Other than that, I think that was pretty much the report for this month. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Trustee Guzzo. Maria, I see you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I had a question, and I don't know, and I don't think Chair Dward is here, so I'm not sure if one of the other trustees can answer, but I did tune into the special meeting, and I have gone back and listened because I wasn't sure if I missed something, but the motion that was passed was to write a letter to the minister expressing concerns with, some COVID-19 related issues. Absenteeism was a big discussion item and other things. And it was made very clear before the vote that the purpose of the letter was not to request reinstating any mandates. Yet the letter that was issued asks for the minister to reinstate mandates. And the subject line refers to reinstating, mandates or protective strategies or whatever it is. So I'm just wondering how that letter got issued, because that was not the motion and that was not the discussion at the board table.
I could answer that, Trustee Agnew.
Sure. Yep. Go ahead.
Thank you. So thanks, Maria, for the question. Unfortunately, like I said, Trustee Duart's not here to answer that, but I will portray that question and get back to you in regards to it.
Okay, well, I was intending to write him anyways, but I thought since it came up at this meeting, I would ask the question here as well.
Yep, no problem. You're right. Like I said, the letter just went out on Friday, so it's only Monday. So we were all at Oxta, so Trustee Duart's not here, so I can't answer for that.
Okay.
Thank you. Is there any other questions at all? No. Okay. Thank you again, Trustee Guzzo. Moving on, we are at item number 10, which is SEAC discussion and questions. Does anyone have anything they would like to discuss? No. Okay. So moving on, so meeting summary and next steps. I think we talked about a couple of resources being shared. I already see Denise is sharing some of those in the chat, so thank you for that. And we will also take a look at that business arising piece with respect to the letter to the ministry about the spec ed funding. So we can, I'm sure, put that on as an update for our next meeting and just update that piece on our business arising. I don't think I'm missing. Oh, Stephanie's going to check into whether or not we can attend the life skills dance. So just a couple of things there. Yeah, Trustee Guzzo, you have a question?
I'm so sorry, Trustee Agnew, I forgot to mention the equity audit has commenced. A firm has been confirmed. I just haven't had a chance to send out information to all of the attendees. So that has started. It was going to start virtually, so I don't have an update on progress or anything, just that it was going to be started. So I just thought I would report. My apologies. I had it on my list and I missed it.
Great, thanks for the update. That's important. Thank you very much. Okay, our next meeting is May the 30th, and for the May agenda, it will include the special education plan summary of revisions, as Stephanie had mentioned, and a presentation on STEAM and special education. We've also, and I'll just put this here for consideration, for those who may wish to meet in person, depending on your comfort level, for the May 30th meeting, if you would like to be a part of the meeting in the boardroom, just message myself and, or you can message Andrew with a copy to myself and Rick as our vice chair, and we can look to make some arrangements for that. I think it would be great. I'm going to plan to go in for that meeting, and it'd be great for those, again, who feel comfortable, for anyone who feels like they want to get back in person for some of these meetings. I'm happy to open that up for our May 30th meeting. And for those, obviously, who can't join, we have the ability of doing a hybrid model. So just wanted to put that up there, and we can certainly follow that up with an email. But if you are interested in attending in person, please feel free to do so and just let us know so that we can make the appropriate arrangements. Okay, and item number 13 is our resolution for absenteeism. So I did receive some regrets this evening in advance. So be it resolved that Marvin, Andrea Locorici, Helena, and Dan be excused. Could I get a mover for that? Anyone? Sorry, I can't see my chat. Let me. Paul moved. Okay, and seconded.
Rick will second.
Diane. Thanks, Rick. That's awesome. Thanks so much. Okay, and the last item, number 14, is our adjournment and our closing prayer. So if I can get a motion to adjourn. Moved by
Rick.
Rick, thank you. Seconded. Diane. Thanks, Diane. Okay, and our closing prayer. So if you'll join me in the sign of our faith, in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Blessed are you, O God of all creation. Each day you spread before us the rich and wonderful diversity of the human family created in the divine splendor of your love. Fashioned in your image, you call us to love one another with the same tender care with which you brought us to creation. Each one of us is but one small part of the glory that is you. As we serve the students and families of the Halton Catholic District School Board on the Special Education Advisory Committee, fill us with your grace, guide us with your wisdom, and give us the strength and courage to do your work, so that it may always be said of our every act, God saw that it was good. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Thank you, everyone, for a great meeting, and have a wonderful rest of your evening.